Thank you guys for joining me for this last segment of the show, talking about one of the most anticipated pro days in the last few years with Caleb Williams. Not only because he is super talented, exciting prospect that everyone wants to get a look into, but because he didn't work out at the combine, pushing it, increasing the level of anticipation and wanting to see him out there, how he looks on the field, throwing to his receivers. All of that was built up to this moment, and there was a lot of teams there, representatives there to see Williams throw at his pro day. And other than showing off the arm talent and just how he performs out there, and just on his skill set and his arm talent, a big thing that he stressed, and I think a lot of analysts and a lot of scouts wanted to see, was his consistency and in the pocket throws, because I think a lot of times people, and he said it in an interview, I think with NFL on ESPN with Louis Riddick. I think he mentioned it, how if you throw on his highlights and if people want to get to know or learn about Caleb Williams, they'll look him up. And on YouTube, you see all these crazy throws, him outside the pocket, throwing across his body, throwing 50 miles down the field. All that looks great and all, but he wanted to go out there and show his consistency, the fundamentals, and in the pocket throws, because those are obviously still important. It's not likely that he's gonna make all those plays in the NFL. It's a different level in the NFL. That's obvious, and for him to always be making these kind of throws, it's not really logical. So, quieting the naysayers, quieting those doubts about him in the pocket, his feet movement, his ball placement, his timing, and all that, I think those were the biggest things that people wanted to see. And it's funny how that works, because a lot of times in these pro days, you see guys making these crazy throws, it goes viral, then their stock rises even more. It's funny how it's the other way now, and people are going there to not see those throws and want to see Caleb, tone it down a little bit and see what he's like in the pocket, standing still, and what his timing is like and all of that. And I think that's super interesting, and it just credits to him, because people already know you can do all the crazy stuff, all the abnormal stuff. They just want to see you do what all these other guys can do, all the normal things, and make sure if you can do that at a high level, it's all wrapped up there. You're gonna go number one if you can do that, and he showed that he could do that at a high level with his receivers there at the USC Pro Day. Funny, right before it all started, funny that they had to change a lot of it. Weirdly, because one of the receivers actually got hurt. He was nursing an injury leading up to it, and they had to change some of the routes, cut some of them out, and sort of change the script that they wanted to put on display for everybody. That could have been a catastrophic thing, honestly, because these quarterbacks go into this with a plan in their head. They know what it's all going to be like, and for it to change there right before it all started, some quarterbacks could panic, and it could throw them off a lot because of that big change. And one of the scouts actually praised Caleb Williams for his easygoing attitude and adjusting to it right away. He said pretty much the same sentiment, that all the quarterbacks have practiced this so much, and they would have handled that differently. Some handle it better than others. Caleb was fine. He was going with the flow. It was easy for him. And I think that also touches on another thing that these scouts and people wanted to see. On top of all the throws and the football related stuff, I think people were impressed and taken back a little bit, honestly, with Caleb's attitude and his personality showing out on the field. He was smiling a lot with all of his receivers. And again, just looking back at some of the interviews that he did, one of the biggest things that he said that is really important to him is taking care of his guys, making sure his guys are good, making sure they're having fun out there, they're enjoying the game, not really putting too much pressure on them. I think that showed out a lot in his pro day, just showing his personality and how really easy he makes it look sometimes, and how much better he can make everyone around him, which is the biggest thing when you're taking on all the pressures of carrying an organization. To make it look that easy, I think speaks volumes to him as a player, but also as a person. And another scout also touched on that, from the AFC, they said he carried himself really well. All of these pro days kind of take a life of their own. Today's pro day with Caleb kind of took on his personality. Easygoing, really calm, nothing rattles him. Just sharing that same sentiment I did just then. I think that's the biggest thing with Caleb. I keep touching on it before at the combine when he spoke to the media. Some of those things I've seen reactions from other analysts or people that just talk about the NFL. The way he answers some questions, when people ask why he's not working out, and he'll say, the tape's out there if you have any doubts, that rubs people the wrong way. Inevitably, it just does for some people. It doesn't sit well with them. So I think now seeing him in a more natural environment for him, you could really see what kind of person he is. And he doesn't look like it. I don't know the guy, but he doesn't look like a guy that's too too high on himself. He seems very humble the way he talks about his teammates and stuff like that. And I think that's huge for the scouts and GMs all to see there. And specifically the guys that were there. Obviously the Bears had the most representatives there. I think they had about 10 or 12-ish people there. The Commanders were also there, and the Patriots had the least amount of representatives there, but they were also there. And the Bears really went all out, and I wasn't surprised to see all the things they did, but to see them talk to his dad, talk to head coach Lincoln Riley, they took him out to dinner leading up to his pro day. That's interesting because leading up to his pro day, Caleb told all the teams that were going to be there that he would make time for them after the workouts, after his pro day. But according to NFL Network, he made the exception just for the Bears. Only the Chicago Bears had contact with him before his pro day, and they were able to find time with him. And that's, interesting in the sense that if you didn't think the Bears were going to draft him, this all but solidifies it even more. And going into detail, one of the reporters from the Chicago Tribune, Brad Biggs, also went into more detail about what this contact was like before their pro day, what this interaction was like. Actually, on Tuesday, before his pro day, that was on Wednesday, he said, on Tuesday, the team spent nearly half the day on campus with Williams at the football facility, talking ball, doing work on the whiteboard, and watching film. Williams' attention to detail struck the Bears. He was the one taking notes, not the team officials. And I didn't know that. That's a big piece of just actions that happened with Caleb, and how much you can see how much the Bears really care about this. They're the team that spent the most time with him, and I think Caleb, in one aspect, knows that, if he'll be drafted to any team, he'll be happy, but he's making sure that he's making an exception for the Bears. He's showing his best behavior for the Bears, not trying to not be himself, but going all out a little bit more to show the Bears what kind of person that he is and what kind of professional that he is by taking notes, doing work on the whiteboards, watching film, getting to know him more on a personal level. I think that's smart by both parties. The Bears get to see what he's really like, and Caleb is doing, them a favor and making the exception for them, showing them that he truly is and would be invested in them if they were to draft them. And I think that was cool to see, all these things that happen when nobody's really paying attention. The Bears are spending a lot more time with them, so that's good. And also, when I saw the video, Caleb Williams walking in, dapping up everybody, giving a handshake to everyone, I didn't know that when he went over and hugged Keenan Allen, that was Keenan Allen until it was pointed out to me. And, how much do you want to do to show that the Bears are going to draft him, number one overall? There are new wide receivers there to see his new quarterback potentially throw the ball around. They have the most people there. They're going to continue to talk to him about the team on a personal level, and that's sort of the next step now in this whole process with Caleb Williams. He didn't say which teams he was going to go on a official visit with, but he said he's ironing it out. And the Bears are obviously going to be one of them. They're going to bring him into Hollis Hall in Chicago on a top 30 visit where, like I mentioned at the start of the show, they can have a more in-depth conversation with him, show him around the facility, get him acclimated, I guess you could say, a little bit with the city and what it's like, how it looks around the facility and stuff like that. They'll get to know him a little bit more personally, I'm sure. But the biggest thing could be his medicals, just because he didn't provide them for anybody at the combine, and that was looked at as a big thing. People, if they're not going to work out, at least they'll show you or give their medicals. He didn't do either of that because he stood on the fact that, not everyone's going to get the chance to draft him, so why would he show and share his medicals with everybody if only a few teams are going to do it? So that was a big talking point at the combine, and now they're officially going to see where he's at physically, not combine-wise, but just where he's at. If he's all good physically, there's nothing really more to say about Caleb Williams and where he'll end up. I think the Bears are just making it more and more obvious, and I think they should. I like it that they're just really not taking anything for granted. They're not really being sneaky about it. They have the number one pick, so they really decide how this is all going to go. Drafting him, I think, is becoming more and more obvious for everybody, and I think it's great because the Bears have done a good job of building up this roster, and the only thing they need is a guy of this talent level. So it all just seems to be too perfect not to happen. Of course, we're going to see how many people show up at Jaden Daniels' and LSU's Pro Day, but I don't think it will be nearly as much as it was here today for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. The draft is really going to start after that pick, so once that happens, we're going to see where this all goes. But that's what I took away from Caleb's Pro Day, what he really showed out there. I saw Dan Orlovsky say it was underwhelming, which it does make sense, and I do think it does fit this perfectly, and it just shows what kind of player that Caleb Williams is really overall, that he's just showing less on his pro day than most other guys are doing. But that's where it all is at this moment with Caleb Williams and where he stands with the Bears. And that's all the time I'm going to have for you guys on this episode there on that last segment. So, as always, please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Make sure to follow the network on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for more of the network's content outside of sports as well. If you want to see more of me and this show, you can go on to the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel, where all the live entire episodes are. If you want to go back and watch a whole episode, they're all on there. YouTube Shorts on other various topics around the NFL are on there as well, on top of the individual segment videos. If you missed a segment or want to go back and watch a specific segment, I post those on there as well for you guys all to check them out. And as a reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more conversations, topics, and stories around the NFL and around football. As always, I want to thank you guys for joining me on this episode. I've been your host, Manny Moradiege, wishing you guys a great weekend, and I will see you guys all next week on Monday.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to